We had some pretty big NHL trades right near the roster freeze deadline. So today we're recapping all the activity, including the trades involving guys like Ryan Ellis, Jared McCann, Nolan Patrick, and more. We'll discuss all the things that happened coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, there was a flurry of activity in the final hour leading into the NHL roster freeze deadline ahead of the Seattle expansion draft. So as of right now, as I record this, rosters are now frozen. We will not get any more trades or other activity involving anything but Seattle making deals up until Thursday. So right now, that's how it sits. The expansion draft is Wednesday. The roster freeze comes off after that on Thursday. So let's get started recapping the events that we saw here, and some of it was pretty substantial. The biggest trade was Ryan Ellis being traded from Nashville to Philadelphia. We know the Flyers were after a top pair right shot defenseman to play with Ivan Provorov. They've been linked to Seth Jones, but we knew that wasn't going well because he wouldn't sign an extension. We knew they were linked to Dougie Hamilton, but many felt he wasn't exactly the right type of defenseman they wanted. So that leads us to Ryan Ellis, who they had expressed interest in before. Of course, he comes with a fair bit of term and a very, I'd say pretty reasonable cost-controlled contract that obviously they're fond of. So going back to the Predators is center iceman Nolan Patrick, who we know wanted a fresh start, as well as young defenseman Philippe Myers. So the Predators get a younger defenseman, obviously cheaper than Ellis. Looks like the Predators are trying to go down through a bit of a rebuild here. They've got a lot of pieces up for sale. Rene just retired. There's a lot of activity that could happen with the Preds organization. And then they get Nolan Patrick, who then they turned around and traded. So it was essentially almost like a three-team deal. So Nolan Patrick then gets traded to the Vegas Golden Knights in exchange for Cody Glass. So the Predators walk away with Philippe Myers and Cody Glass out of this deal instead of Nolan Patrick. So to me, that's fantastic. Now, I talked before about the Golden Knights being linked to Nolan Patrick, that he was likely getting moved this offseason. It was rumored that he wanted a fresh start, wanted out of Philly, and then I figured that was a good spot for him. Of course, he comes from the Brandon Wheat Kings organization, which was, run by Kelly McCrimmon, the GM in Vegas for a long time. So there was a connection there. I said, if anybody knows this player the best, it would be McCrimmon. So Vegas makes a lot of sense. They need help at center. He's going to be a pretty cheap option to pick up. And voila, they have to give up Cody Glass to do it. But Cody Glass is another, a high pick for them that they're going to move on from. They haven't been extremely thrilled with his development, and a fresh start might be what's needed for him too. He'll get more of an opportunity to play in Nashville, and we'll see if he can get things back on track here as well. So overall, I'm pretty surprised Ryan Ellis was traded, to be honest. But I think this signifies a bit of a rebuild here for the Predators. There's no doubt, because his name was in play before, but we hadn't really heard any rumblings in a little while. So that's pretty significant seismic trade. This also changes things here for the Flyers as well. Moving out Nolan Patrick is going to allow them to protect JVR in the expansion draft. They're probably still exposing Voracek, which could end up being the pick. Hard to say. Or Gostisbehere is another possibility too, but still, that's going to change the whole dynamic on what's going to be available in the expansion draft. Plus, they get their top right shot defenseman at a pretty good term and money value to boot. So this is a great trade for Philly. I really like it. And if Nashville's going to go down the road of a rebuild, they got some younger assets like Myers and Glass that they can start to use as future assets, which is not a bad pickup. So that's all in all a pretty good haul going both ways, but I do like things better for Philly. We'll see about Vegas. I don't know if Nolan Patrick is the answer to their center depth that they need, but he will possibly help. And like I said, if anybody knows the player can help them, it's Kelly McCrimmon and Golden Knights. So should be good for Patrick as well. Now, we also saw a few other deals, including the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Toronto Maple Leafs hooking up on a deal, which sends Jared McCann from Pittsburgh to the Maple Leafs in exchange for prospect Philip Hallander and a 7th-round pick. Now, of course, Hallander was originally drafted by Pittsburgh, was involved in another trade going to Toronto, so certainly a player that the Penguins are quite familiar with, so they're probably quite happy to get him back. They don't have to worry about losing McCann in the expansion draft, and they go forth from there. Obviously, we know Burke and Hextall are going to be making some changes, and there's actually, based on what's rumored for their expansion draft plans, there could be a fair bit available to Seattle to pick from. So I'll be curious to see the official list when that comes out tomorrow. But Jared McCann was one of those guys that I wasn't really sure what they were going to do with. He was kind of on the brink there. Like after they signed Teddy Bluger, I'm like, okay, I wonder what this means. Are they going to end up exposing McCann? They picked up Jeff Carter at the deadline, and he was a really good fit. They gave up assets for him too, so I'm like, are they going to expose him? I mean, they might be less likely to take him given his age and stuff, but it's just hard to say. But all in all, it kind of pushed McCann to be the more likely candidate to get taken in Seattle, and they moved him rather than lose him for nothing. Instead, in return, they get a prospect who's a pretty solid prospect at that in Hallander, who they're familiar with, and he comes back and hopefully will make the jump to North America for the coming season here. Vancouver Canucks had been rumored for the last hour and a half leading into this freeze to be up to something as well, and they did indeed complete a deal. They picked up Jason Dickinson, who was most likely going to be the pick from the Kraken from the Dallas Stars. So he goes to the Vancouver Canucks in exchange for a third-round pick. So it gives the Canucks another, middle six to bottom six decent young forward. I mean, Dickinson's not exactly letting it up in Dallas, but he's a decent, solid hockey player. I think he can fit there. I know they really want to change their bottom six. They've been trying to move out a lot to get Brendan Sutter's a UFA. He's probably not coming back. They have Roussel, Beagle, and a lot of those older, not so favorable contracts that they'd like to move on from. So obviously, when they can finally do that, it creates more room for guys like Dickinson in the lineup. So decent pickup there by Jim Benning. I'm surprised he didn't go out and overspend. I know there was a lot of people speculating that Benning was going to swing for a much bigger deal. And not to say that they can't do something later, but I think the Canucks certainly have a few other balls in the air that we'll see where they land after this freeze comes undone here and goes back to being able to make deals. The San Jose Sharks finally got themselves another goaltender who's got more potential and can push Martin Jones. I would suspect Jones will obviously be exposed in the expansion draft. Probably not taken, though. But they picked up Adin Hill from the Coyotes, which is quite surprising. Everybody thought Darcy Kuemper was going to be the guy that was traded. All kinds of talk about Kuemper being moved in the last couple of days, and even today, earlier before the deadline, all kinds of Darcy Kuemper talk this morning, and Adin Hill is the guy that ends up going. So Kuemper is going to have to be protected now. So obviously Adin Hill was going to be protected before, and obviously change of plans there from Arizona. They must have liked the return better on this than any Kuemper trades. And we'll see what happens. I don't think Darcy Kuemper is going to stay in Arizona, though. I still think he'll likely get moved at a later time. But obviously, this changes the whole dynamic for their expansion draft purposes. So he goes over to the San Jose Sharks, along with a 7th-round pick in exchange for Joseph Coroner and a 2nd-round pick. So obviously, we'll see what happens here for the Coyotes and what they end up doing for protection. But I still, like I said, I don't see Kuemper being a Coyote for too much longer. The New York Rangers also made a pair of deals. They picked up the UFA signing rights to Barclay Goodrow from Tampa. So you have to think they must have had some talks, and they're obviously confident that they can get him signed. They didn't give up much, though. They only give up a 7th-round pick, but obviously Goodrow and Coleman, we know, are UFAs in Tampa, played a big role in their Stanley Cup victory the past 2 years, but it's almost impossible for them to be able to, to re-sign there given their severe cap issues that they're dealing with. So Goodrow likely will be signing with the Rangers. They only give up a 7th-round pick to get a head start on that, so that's a good pickup for them. Somebody who can play, a solid middle six role, good penalty killer, as well as, just good at 200-foot game, good at both ends of the ice, solid defensively. So nice pickup there for the New York Rangers. And they also traded Brett Howden as well. Howden's off to the Vegas Golden Knights as well for a 2022 4th-round pick and Nick DeSimone. So that's a couple of young center icemen picked up by the Golden Knights. So as I've talked about before, the Golden Knights are a team, like I said in their offseason plan video, even though they've only been in the league for 4 years, they're not a young team, and they haven't really had a whole lot of anything come through the draft that they really developed and built into their lineup outside of like a White Cloud, for example. There's not much. There's, guys like White Cloud and Haig, and there's really not much else. A lot of their top picks are all gone now that they've moved on from Glass. I mean, they already traded Eric Branstrom. They already traded Nick Suzuki. They went after a lot of big veteran guys like Stone and Pacioretty and these other guys, and they've moved out most of those assets so early on that they really haven't developed a whole lot of anything. So to get guys like Nolan Patrick and Brett Howden will certainly add not only some center depth, but add some youth as well to a team that really needs it. And we'll see how they fit in here. I'm not completely convinced they don't go after a bigger center, but they're going to have to do some more salary cap maneuvering here before they can really make something like that happen. And of course, we had some big signings as well, but the biggest one being Miro Heiskanen, and Dallas signed a mega deal, 8 years at $8.45 million. Surprised there's not a ton of signing bonus money. There's a little bit in the first year, and that is it, which is great. He does have a full no-move clause in the final 4 years of the deal. You do have to have 7 pro seasons or be age 27 before that can kick in. Kind of comes along with the same time you can be a UFA. So he doesn't qualify for that until then, but they give him the no-move as soon as he's eligible for it. And I guess we're not done. We have more breaking news that just came in after I recorded the other part of this video. Andrew Ladd has been traded by the Islanders over to the Arizona Coyotes. Only Lou figured out a way to get this done. This is an amazing deal for the New York Islanders. They had to give up a decent amount of future assets to make it happen, but they need the cap space in the worst way. That Ladd contract was weighing them down big time. So they sent Andrew Ladd to the Arizona Coyotes along with 3 draft picks, which includes a second-round pick in 2021, a conditional pick in next year's 2022 draft. The condition is that they hold multiple second-rounders right now. They have their own pick and a pick acquired in the Devon Toews trade to the Avalanche. Whatever pick is the higher one is the one that they will give up to the Coyotes. And there's also including a 2023 third-round pick. I do believe that pick also has conditions on it, but I could not find those details here just yet. If I do find that before this video makes it to YouTube, then check the pinned comment. But that's a massive trade for the New York Islanders. I can't believe Lou was able to figure out a way out of this Andrew Ladd trade. They already moved Nick Leddy to Detroit yesterday. Now Ladd today. That is phenomenal moves by the guy who's 2-time back-to-back GM of the year. This is why he wins those awards. He finds ways to get deals done. Like, he is still one of the best GMs around in the NHL. I don't care what anybody says. It's amazing work by Lou Lamoriello and the Islanders. Even though they had to give up some assets to do it, they're really not in that bad of a situation when it comes to their draft capital. So to me, this is well worth it if it means they can retain Adam Pelech, they can retain Elias Sorokin, they can keep Beauvillier, and they can try to go after another player as well to add a score to Matthew Barzal's line, or they can make a trade later. Either way, it gives them a lot more flexibility that is much, much needed. So excellent work there by Lou and his team. And of course, we had some big signings as well, but the biggest one being Miro Heiskanen, and Dallas signed a mega deal, 8 years at $8.45 million. Surprised there's not a ton of signing bonus money. There's a little bit in the first year, and that is it, which is great. He does have a full no-move clause in the final 4 years of the deal. You do have to have 7 pro seasons or be age 27 before that can kick in. Kind of comes along with the same time you can be a UFA. So he doesn't qualify for that until then, but they give him the no-move as soon as he's eligible for it. Obviously, that's a huge contract. He's probably going to be worth every penny, and I would suspect in even a few years' time, it's going to possibly start to look like a bargain, but it's certainly going to be a template and something that's going to be used as a comparable for guys like Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar, even Adam Fox is coming up here soon. Like, they're all going to need new deals, and this is going to be one that's precedent-setting in that regard. I still think you could see a guy like Makar maybe get a little bit more, but Hughes may or may not be the same, or maybe even a little bit less, because it's rumored he might take a shorter term, which will certainly impact the AAV, but certainly a mega contract there for Dallas. The Maple Leafs signed goaltender Joseph Woll to a 1-year contract. It's a 2-way deal. Your pretty standard $750,000, $75,000 at the AHL. So that really had nothing to do with the expansion draft. One of the few things we saw today that didn't kind of have any expansion draft implications because he's exempt from it, having less than the required experience. Ducks signed Alex Volkov to a 1-year, 1-way deal as well, $925,000. So that gives them another forward who can be exposed in the expansion draft, or they can choose to expose somebody else, but it gives them another player that meets the requirements. So we'll see how that impacts their plans. And the Tampa Bay Lightning also signed Freddie Claesson. Again, he obviously was there for their Stanley Cup victory. Gets a 1-year, 2-way deal, $750,000 at the NHL, $250,000 at the AHL. Of course, he's a pretty experienced, depth defenseman now at this point in his career. So again, another player that can be exposed. So obviously, as teams maneuver around, they want to get some options available to Seattle that they don't mind losing. And most of these signings, except for Heiskanen and Woll, I guess the last two mainly, are guys that can certainly help with those requirements. So it's been a busy, hectic day. There's still going to be all kinds of talk and rumors likely over the next several days of what the lists are going to be for Seattle. We'll likely get that tomorrow. So something that we'll be discussing here soon enough when we get the official list. And then, of course, lots of talk of what trades we'll see next as we leave the expansion draft when that's over here in a few days and head towards the entry draft, which will likely heat up another crop of trade activity. So stay tuned for that. We'll keep you up to date here with Top Shelf Hockey with all the latest news and rumors on all 32 NHL teams. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. You won't miss anything. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.